There comes a moment in life when everything changes, and it doesn't happen gradually, it happens instantly. Not because you worked 100 small steps over years, though those matter too. It happens because at some point you draw a line in the sand and you say, "No more, this is it, today I decide." That one decision becomes the hinge on which your entire future swings. People often think transformation is complicated, but it's not. The truth is, your life doesn't shift when you think about change or when you wish for change. It shifts the very moment you decide that you will no longer accept what you've been accepting. Think about it. Every breakthrough, every new chapter, every success story you admire began with a single choice. A choice to walk away, a choice to start over, a choice to believe in something bigger than the fear that kept them small. It wasn't the hundreds of actions that came afterward that made the story possible. Those were just the fruit. It was the decision at the root that gave life to everything else. The human mind is powerful, but it's also tricky. It convinces us that the weight of our lives rests on dozens of scattered decisions. What career to pursue, what relationships to keep, how to spend our money, how to spend our time. And while those decisions matter, they're all shaped by one fundamental choice: who you decide to be. Until you make that choice, every smaller decision will be fragile, inconsistent, and reactive. But the moment you decide, truly decide, you reorganize your entire existence around that new commitment. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the tension that arises when your actions and your beliefs don't line up. The mind cannot live in that tension forever. It will always adjust something to create harmony. So when you make a defining decision, you're forcing your mind to align everything else with it. That's why the power of one choice is so transformative. If you decide you're done with mediocrity, your habits shift. If you decide you're no longer available for toxic relationships, your boundaries strengthen. If you decide your health is non-negotiable, suddenly your schedule finds space for it. It looks like discipline from the outside, but at its core, it's simply alignment with a deeper decision. But here's the trap most people fall into. They confuse wanting with deciding. Wanting to change your life feels good. It's inspiring, it's motivating for a few days, maybe a week. But wanting doesn't hold power. A decision is different. A decision is final. It carries weight because it cuts off every other option. In fact, the word decide comes from the Latin decidere, which literally means to cut off. When you decide, you sever the option of going back. You don't say, "I want to quit this job one day." You say, "I am done with this job, and today I start building the next chapter." You don't say, "I want to be healthier." You say, "I am a person who values health, and that's final." That shift is not a wish, it's a turning point. Philosophically, it's fascinating to realize that freedom doesn't come from having more options. Real freedom comes from making one powerful choice and then devoting yourself to it fully. Because once you've decided, you no longer waste energy negotiating with yourself. You no longer wrestle every morning with, "Should I do this or not?" That inner conflict vanishes, and the clarity of your decision liberates you to move forward. That's why some people accomplish in months what others couldn't in decades. They made the one decision others keep postponing. So the question isn't, do you want a better life? Of course you do. The question is, have you made the decision that demands it? Because until you do, everything else will feel temporary, unstable, easily undone by fear, distraction, or excuses. But the moment you decide, really decide, you shift from being a passenger in your life to being the driver. And maybe for you, that decision is overdue. Maybe deep down you already know the choice that's been waiting for you, the relationship you need to walk away from, the dream you need to finally pursue, the standard you need to stop lowering. You don't need more time, more research, more reassurance. You need a decision, because here's the truth: your life can remain the same for the next 5 years, or it can change completely in one day, and the difference between those two outcomes is just one choice. One decision that says, "This is who I am now, and I will not go back." That's the moment everything changes. If the decision is the hinge that opens the door to a new life, then fear and comfort are the locks that keep that door shut. And this is where most people get stuck. They hear the call for change, they feel that inner nudge that says, "You're meant for more," but instead of answering it, they hesitate. They let fear whisper in their ear, "What if you fail? What if people laugh? What if you're not enough?" And rather than stepping through the door, they sit back down in the same chair they've been in for years, telling themselves it's safer to stay. But let's be honest, safe isn't really safe. Staying in your comfort zone doesn't protect you, it traps you. It's a quiet prison. You may not see the bars, but you feel them every time you wake up with that gnawing sense that you're capable of more, but you just won't reach for it. Fear disguises itself as logic, but in reality, it's a thief. It steals opportunities, it robs you of growth, and worst of all, it convinces you to settle for a smaller version of yourself. And here's the hard truth. Comfort is just fear in disguise. People say, "I'm comfortable, I don't need more." But what they're really saying is, "I'm afraid to try, because trying might expose me to failure, rejection, or struggle." Comfort isn't neutral, it's the slow erosion of potential, and the longer you sit in it, the harder it becomes to break out. Think about anyone you admire, anyone who truly changed their life, built something great, or made a lasting impact. None of them got there by choosing comfort. They stepped into fear, they walked into the unknown, and they made peace with uncertainty. Why? Because they understood that growth never lives inside the familiar. The life you dream about is not in the same neighborhood as your comfort zone. It's on the other side of risk. And you cannot get there without stepping into the territory of fear. Now let's go deeper for a moment. Psychologists talk about the fight or flight response, how the brain perceives danger even when no real threat exists. Your mind can react to a new opportunity the same way it reacts to a predator. It sees risk, it senses the unknown, and it tells you to run back to safety. But here's the key difference. Most of what we fear today is not life-threatening. It's ego-threatening, it's identity-threatening. We fear embarrassment, we fear rejection, we fear failure. And so we treat these emotional risks as if they're mortal dangers, but they're not. They're simply thresholds to growth. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard said that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. That moment of fear you feel before making a bold choice isn't a signal to retreat. It's evidence that you're standing at the edge of freedom. The dizziness you feel is not a warning, it's an invitation, and the moment you choose to step forward anyway, you expand the boundaries of your life. The problem is, most people wait for fear to disappear before they move. They think courage is about the absence of fear, when in reality, courage is simply deciding that something else matters more. Fear never vanishes. It just loses its grip the moment you choose to move despite it. That's why every breakthrough begins with discomfort. It feels unnatural, it feels scary, but that's how you know you're on the right path. So let me challenge you. What comfort are you clinging to that's keeping you small? What fear has disguised itself so well that you've mistaken it for common sense? Is it the job you stay in because it's stable, even though it's draining your spirit? Is it the relationship you won't leave because you're afraid of being alone? Is it the dream you won't pursue because the thought of failure feels unbearable? Whatever it is, understand this. Fear is not there to stop you. It's there to signal that you're moving towards something worth having. The truth is, the comfort zone is not where life happens. Life is lived in the space where you're stretched, challenged, tested. It's in the risks that scare you, the decisions that make your heart race, the moments where you don't know the outcome, but you choose to trust yourself anyway. That's where growth lives, that's where change begins, and that's where the life you want is waiting. So if you've already made the decision to change, the next step is clear. You must be willing to break free from the false safety of comfort and walk straight through fear. Because the very thing you fear most often holds the key to the future you desire. And when you dare to step into it, you realize something powerful. Fear wasn't the enemy after all. Fear was just the gatekeeper. And once you walk past it, the world opens in ways you never imagined. Once you've made the decision to change, and once you've chosen to break free from the grip of comfort and fear, the next step is even deeper. Because real transformation isn't just about what you do, it's about who you decide to become. Most people make the mistake of starting with action. They think, if I do enough, if I try hard enough, if I grind long enough, eventually I'll become the person I want to be. But it doesn't work that way. Action without identity is fragile. It's like building a house on sand. The first storm that comes will knock it down. The truth is, your actions always flow from your identity. Who you believe yourself to be will shape every choice you make, every habit you build, every standard you set. If deep down you still see yourself as the same person, no matter how many new actions you try, your old identity will eventually pull you back into old patterns. That's why diets fail. That's why New Year's resolutions fall apart. That's why so many people start strong but never finish, because they try to change the behavior without changing the identity behind it. Think about it. If you tell yourself, I'm trying to quit smoking, you're identifying as a smoker who's fighting a habit. But if you tell yourself, I am not a smoker, you've shifted your identity. Suddenly, the decision isn't about resisting temptation. It's about aligning with who you already are. Identity creates a standard that actions naturally follow. Psychologists call this self-concept. It's the image you carry of yourself, and it is the most powerful driver of behavior. People don't consistently act out of willpower. They act out of identity. Willpower is temporary. Identity is permanent. You will always fight for the integrity of the person you believe yourself to be. And here's the thing. You get to decide who that person is. That's why the decision we talked about earlier matters so much. Because when you make that one defining choice, what you're really doing is declaring a new identity. You're saying, I am no longer this version of me. I am now this. And once you anchor yourself in that truth, the actions begin to flow naturally. But this requires honesty. You can't keep calling yourself something smaller than you're capable of. You can't keep saying, I'm just not disciplined, I'm just not confident, I'm just not lucky. Every time you repeat those stories, you reinforce an identity that doesn't serve you. And as long as you carry that identity, you'll keep proving it true with your actions. If you want different results, you have to adopt a different story about who you are. Philosophically, this is about essence over effort. Aristotle once said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. But even deeper than that, habits themselves are born from identity. Excellence is not about doing, it's about being. You don't just practice excellence, you become excellent. And once you identify as someone who lives at that level, mediocrity is no longer an option. So, ask yourself, who do you need to decide to be? Not what do you need to do, but who do you need to become? If you want to lead, you must identify as a leader before anyone else follows you. If you want to succeed, you must identify as someone worthy of success before the results appear. If you want to live with integrity, you must identify as a person who tells the truth even when it costs you something. The identity comes first, the action follows. Now, let me be clear. This doesn't mean you wait until you feel fully transformed before you move. No, you begin acting in alignment with the new identity immediately. You walk like it, talk like it, make decisions like it, even before the world recognizes it. Because the more you act from that place, the more the identity solidifies. And once it's solid, it no longer feels forced. It feels natural, and that's the secret to real change. You don't discipline yourself into becoming someone new. You decide who you are, and then you let that decision guide every discipline. The shift is subtle but profound, because when you live from a new identity, you're no longer struggling to change. You're simply expressing who you already are. So if you've made the decision, if you've chosen courage over comfort, then now is the time to anchor your identity. Don't just say, "I'm trying." Say, "I am." Say it with conviction. Say it with finality, and let every action from this day forward rise to meet that standard. Because the truth is, you'll never outperform the story you believe about yourself. Change the story, and you change the life. Now here's where a lot of people get it wrong. They make the decision, they break free from fear, they even begin to shift their identity, and then they wonder why the momentum doesn't last. And it's because they overlook one critical truth. Your environment is either feeding your decision or starving it. You cannot plant a seed in toxic soil and expect it to grow. You cannot declare a new identity and then keep surrounding yourself with the same patterns, the same habits, the same voices that reinforce the old you. The reality is this: we don't rise to the level of our intentions, we fall to the level of our environment. You can want change, you can even start to embody change. But if you stay surrounded by people who doubt you, if you live in routines that drain you, if you keep old habits within reach, eventually the pull of the old environment will overpower the new decision. That's not weakness, that's human psychology. Jim Rohn said it best: you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And he was right, but it's deeper than that. It's not just people. It's the conversations you allow, the media you consume, the places you spend your time, even the organization of your home or workspace. All of it is shaping your energy, your thoughts, your standards, often without you even realizing it. Your environment is either aligning you with the future you've chosen, or it's silently dragging you back into the past you're trying to escape. Think about it like this. If you've decided to become a healthier version of yourself, but your kitchen is full of junk food and your closest friends mock you for choosing a salad, how long do you think that decision will last? If you've decided to start a business, but you're still spending your evenings binging television with the same people who gave up on their own dreams, how consistent do you think your action will be? The environment will always bend you toward its gravitational pull. If you want to change your life forever, you must decide to change the atmosphere you breathe every day. Now, let me pause here, because some of you are already thinking, but I can't just cut everybody off. I can't just move to a new city, or quit my job, or disappear from my circle. And you're right, it's not always about drastic exits. Sometimes it's about conscious boundaries. Sometimes it's about reducing the influence of certain voices while increasing the influence of others. Sometimes it's about adding small cues to your environment that reinforce your identity. For example, if you want to see yourself as a writer, keep a notebook on your desk. If you want to see yourself as disciplined, start organizing your space. If you want to see yourself as successful, spend time with people who are already living at the level you aspire to reach. Philosophically, this ties back to the law of association. We become like what we consistently expose ourselves to. Your environment is not passive, it's active, shaping you with every interaction. The Stoics believed you could measure a person's character by the company they keep, because your environment always leaves an imprint. The question is, are you being shaped intentionally or accidentally? And here's the kicker. Your environment doesn't just reflect your identity, it reinforces it. When you surround yourself with people who expect more of you, you rise to meet that expectation. When you spend your time in places that demand excellence, you start carrying yourself differently. And when your daily habits are structured around your new standard, it stops being a struggle. It becomes natural. That's why athletes train with other athletes. That's why entrepreneurs seek out masterminds. That's why people of faith gather in community, because they understand no decision is strong enough to survive in isolation. So ask yourself, what in your environment has been sabotaging your decision? Who are the voices you need to quiet, and who are the voices you need to amplify? What habits or objects in your daily space are pulling you backward instead of pushing you forward? Because until you address those, your new identity is always going to feel like it's swimming against the current. And the good news is, you don't have to wait for a perfect environment to appear. You can build it. You can choose the people you call, the books you read, the rooms you sit in, the habits you repeat. You can create small changes that eventually transform the atmosphere of your life. At the end of the day, success isn't just about what you do. It's about where you place yourself while you're doing it. Because the truth is, no matter how powerful your decision, if you keep planting it in soil that cannot sustain it, it will wither. But when you align your environment with who you've chosen to become, growth is no longer a struggle. It's inevitable. So here's the challenge. Stop asking if you've made the right decision, and start asking if you've built the right environment to sustain it. Because your environment is either your greatest ally or your silent enemy. And the day you take control of it is the day your decision truly becomes unstoppable. Now, once your environment is aligned with your decision, once you've set yourself up to win, there's still a daily battle you're going to face. And it's not with other people, it's not with your circumstances, it's with yourself. Every single day, life is going to present you with two choices. You can choose growth, or you can choose excuses. And the difference between those two choices is the difference between a life of expansion and a life of regret. Excuses are easy. Excuses sound reasonable. They sound logical. They even sound comforting. I'm tired today, I'll start tomorrow, I don't have the resources, I don't have the time, I don't have the connections, I don't feel ready yet. And the dangerous thing about excuses is that they're often true in part. Maybe you're tired, maybe you don't have all the resources, maybe you don't feel ready, but excuses are not about truth, they're about permission. They're about giving yourself permission to stay the same. Growth, on the other hand, doesn't ask whether you feel ready. Growth doesn't ask whether you're comfortable. Growth doesn't care about your convenience. Growth demands that you step forward even when you don't have it all figured out. It demands that you stretch yourself, that you push past the limits of what feels safe, and that you sacrifice something today for a greater return tomorrow. Growth is inconvenient, but it's always worth it. This is why so many people never see the transformation they dream about. They want growth, but they keep choosing excuses. They want results, but they keep negotiating with their limitations. They say, "I'll do it when it's easier," not realizing that waiting for ease is the very thing that keeps life hard. Here's the truth: excuses will always be available. Growth will always be optional. And every day you choose excuses, you're building a case for your own limitations. You're training your brain to believe the story of "I can't." But every time you choose growth, even in small ways, you're building the opposite story. You're proving to yourself, "I can." And once you start building that evidence, the identity we talked about earlier grows stronger. The environment you've aligned starts reinforcing it, and suddenly growth becomes your natural default. Psychologically, this is about what's called the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell yourself you can't, your brain finds reasons to confirm it. If you tell yourself you can, your brain finds strategies to support it. You live into the narrative you choose. Excuses lock you into a narrative of limitation. Growth locks you into a narrative of possibility, but growth comes with a price, and that's why most people avoid it. You will sacrifice something if you commit to growth. You'll sacrifice time that could have been spent on entertainment. You'll sacrifice comfort that could have been spent in bed. You'll sacrifice ego because growth forces you to be a beginner again. Sometimes you'll even sacrifice relationships because not everyone in your circle is willing to grow with you. That's the cost. And here's the question you've got to ask yourself. Is the cost of growth heavier than the cost of regret? Because regret is the real weight. Regret is looking back 5, 10, 20 years from now and realizing that the life you wanted was possible, but you traded it for excuses. Regret is the pain of knowing you could have, but you didn't, and I promise you that pain is heavier than the discomfort of growth. So you have to make it non-negotiable. You have to decide no more excuses. From this point forward, I choose growth, even when it's hard, even when I don't feel ready, even when it costs me something. Because here's the secret: growth compounds. The little choices to grow today create momentum for bigger growth tomorrow. And before long, you look back and realize you're living a life you once thought was impossible. And let me tell you this, nobody ever looks back and says, I regret growing, I regret getting stronger, wiser, more disciplined, more resilient. But people live every day regretting the excuses they allowed to steal their potential. So the choice is yours. Every day, every hour, you're being asked the same question. Will you grow, or will you excuse yourself from growth? And the answer to that question, more than talent, more than luck, more than circumstance, will decide the quality of your life. So don't negotiate with your limitations anymore. Don't build a case for why you can't. Make the choice that builds a future instead of a story. Because the truth is simple. Excuses keep you where you are. Growth takes you where you've never been. And the day you choose growth over excuses is the day your life truly begins to change. Everything we've talked about, making the decision, breaking free from comfort, redefining your identity, aligning your environment, and choosing growth over excuses, leads to this final piece. Because none of it matters unless you turn your decision into an irreversible commitment. And that's where most people hesitate. They leave themselves an exit. They keep a back door open just in case. They say, I'll try this for a while and see how it goes. But let me tell you something, I'll try is the language of failure. I'll try is just another way of saying I'm not all in. The truth is, the people who actually change their lives don't give themselves an option to turn back. They make a decision that becomes final, non-negotiable. They reach a point of no return, and that's why their lives transform. Because when you know there is no way back, your only option is forward. Think about it. History is full of examples of irreversible commitment. When explorers set out to discover new worlds, many of them burned their ships when they landed. Why? To eliminate the possibility of retreat. It was a powerful message to themselves and to their crews. We don't go back, we go forward. That kind of commitment forces resourcefulness, it forces growth, it forces success. Because when retreat is no longer on the table, your mind and your spirit find ways to win. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people think commitment is about discipline. They think it's about forcing yourself to push through when you don't feel like it. And yes, discipline matters, but real commitment is deeper than that. Real commitment is identity made permanent. It's when you don't just say, I want to be this person, but I am this person and there is no alternative. At that level, the question isn't how do I stay disciplined? The question is how could I possibly live any other way? Psychologically, this is what's called closing the loop. Your brain hates unfinished business. When you leave yourself a backup plan, when you keep the option of quitting alive, your brain will constantly circle back to it. It will negotiate. It will say, maybe we should quit. Maybe we should take the easier way. But when you close the loop, when you remove the option, your brain stops wasting energy on retreat and devotes everything to moving forward. That's why irreversible commitment creates unstoppable momentum. But let me be honest, this is the scariest step. Because once you commit, once you close the door to your old life, there's no safety net. And that's exactly why it's powerful. Commitment without escape routes sharpens your focus, deepens your resolve, and draws out strengths you didn't even know you had. It forces you to discover what you're really capable of. Philosophically, this is the essence of transformation. You don't fully change until you eliminate the possibility of going back to who you were. You cannot live with one foot in the old life and one foot in the new. At some point, you must step across the line and burn the bridge behind you. That's not reckless, that's decisive. That's how you prove to yourself that you're serious. Now maybe for you, that means quitting the job you've been complaining about for years. Maybe it means cutting ties with people who won't grow with you. Maybe it means finally putting your work out there, starting that business, writing that book, pursuing that calling. Whatever it is, you already know. Deep down, there's a commitment you've been avoiding because it feels final. And yes, it will cost you something, but ask yourself, what will it cost you if you don't commit? What will it cost you if you spend the next decade circling the same decision, dipping your toe in, but never stepping all the way forward? Because life doesn't change when you dabble. Life doesn't change when you keep trying. Life changes when you commit without escape routes. That's the moment when everything inside you shifts, because you know there's no way back. So I'll leave you with this. If there's one decision that can change your life forever, it's not just the decision to try, or to want, or to hope. It's the decision to commit fully, without conditions, without backup plans, without hesitation. To say, this is who I am now, this is the path I'm on, and there is no turning back. Because the truth is, the moment you make that irreversible commitment, the moment you shut every door behind you, is the moment the world opens doors you never even knew existed.